Anyway, so you're a documentary filmmaker. What was it that brought you here? I mean, how did that happen?
I think Keith, my manager and co-producer on many of my projects, was invited by Ben, and then Keith said Michelle has to be there to talk about love and trauma and addiction, because since I made Cracked Up, I've become, people are asking me to speak about it a lot, and I did a TED Talk, and so I get asked to speak. And I think what resonates for people when I speak is I talk about myself. So I'm not just talking about, I know the facts and I know the science, but I'm a trauma survivor and I'm in recovery for 37 years. And so I use myself and what I've been through in my process. And I'm extremely vulnerable. And it's the way we really connect.
Yeah.
Is to talk about our humanness. So that's what I do. Yeah,
the vulnerability. How do you think it is to sort of access that in somebody that you're talking to if you don't feel that they're necessarily in touch with their vulnerability? Or better put, actually view vulnerability as an asset and not a liability? I think, like you said, it is the thing that makes us human. And is it because people are afraid of feelings that they're not able to...
Well, so I'm currently doing a film about Terry Real, who's Bruce Springsteen's therapist.
Wow.
Bruce Patty, Bradley Cooper. But, I could say Bruce because Bruce wrote the foreword to Terry's new book. It'll sound like I'm bragging, but I'm not bragging. But, so Terry, who gets interviewed a lot, I get told I'm a really good interviewer. And Terry, who... because his book came out, he just did like 1 million interviews for the book and podcasts and everything. I'm exaggerating. So he tells me, you're the best, interviewer that I have ever experienced. He was crying, every other question he was crying. And of course we had to reapply the makeup.
Don't you find that in the telling of a story, which happens to be your own, suddenly these sparks go into the audience?
The thing about Earl Morris is he built this camera, the
Interrotron.
Yeah. And I just I didn't use the Interrotron because the Interrotron, you can't be in the room with the person. But I just interviewed Terry, or I had him tell these stories through there's something called an iDirect. And it's so cool because you put this mirror like right in front of the lens. And so we're both looking in the mirror at each other, but you set up the person so they are looking into the lens, so it has the same effect. So the audience, I think that's a big reason why people feel so moved by Earl Morris, because they're talking right to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How did you get into documentary filmmaking?
God.
I know it's a stupid question.
No. I mean, it's crazy. It's a crazy story. But this is really how I live my life. So if I tell you this story, then you'll know me.
Okay.
Which is that...
What a lovely sentiment.
I follow... I really believe in synchronicity. Mm-hmm. I really believe in listening to that inner voice. And so... I did some benefit work with Wavy Gravy without going into like a big, that's a whole other wonderful story. But after we did a lot of this, we worked on a project together. I was so moved by Wavy Gravy. I noticed that everybody who got to be in his presence walked away wanting to go help somebody. Wow. And I was doing a lot of, producing a lot of big protests in New York against the war. And I noticed like people were fighting with each other, even us producers. And I'm like, we're trying to, we're fighting about peaceful protest events. And I just went, if I talk about peace and love, I'll put you to sleep. But if you're around Wavy Gravy, who isn't really saying, talking about peace and love, he just is that.
Exactly.
And with so much humor. And while you're laughing, your perception is getting like this, aligned with that. And so I heard this voice, not on drugs, totally sober, that said, it was like, I call it my field of dreams moment. And I heard a voice saying, if you put him on the screen, people will come and then they'll all want to go help somebody. And that's what I wanted to do. I want, can we all just help each other? That's how I feel inside. Can we all just get along? Can we all help each other? Can we all just see past the,
We all live
the thing?
in the same place.
And so I was an actress at the time,
So,
and I was getting really bored with not getting cast in the parts that I wanted to get cast in. And so I followed this voice, and I go, first I said to the voice, I'm not a filmmaker. What do you mean, make a film about an icon? And it just was very strong. It was like something I had to pay attention to. And the next thing you know, I meet somebody, and I'm one of these people, because what I learned in getting sober is show up and ask for help. Okay?
Which Simone was diametrically opposed.
Because I didn't know how the heck to do anything sober.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to brush my teeth. I didn't know how to eat a meal. I didn't know I was supposed to feed myself. I didn't know how to buy a stamp. I didn't know, how to talk to somebody. I didn't know how to have a feeling. So, talk about overwhelming. It's like, taking a fish out of water and just throwing it on the sand, and then you feel like that fish flopping around. And so that's what happened. I learned in getting sober, do the next right thing. Just show up to the meeting. Just don't pick up that day. And really, everything I learned in sobriety, it's kind of like that saying, everything you learn in kindergarten, you'll use for the rest of your life. And everything I learned in those first 90 days of sobriety, that's really how I made the Wavy Gravy movie. And so I just started asking people for help. And somebody said, oh, you should call D.A. Pennebaker. I was like, oh, really? That's like calling Scorsese.
Yeah.
What do you mean, call D.A. Pennebaker? And she picks up the phone. She's like...
Or the Maisleys.
Yeah, she picks up the phone and calls all his friends, call him Penny. Says, Michelle is here, and he was supporting New York filmmakers. And could you talk to her? She needs a fiscal sponsor. He had this thing called Living Archives. He says, sure, send her over. So I go over. I meet. Next thing you know, I'm sitting in front of D.A. Pennebaker, and he became his foundation, Living Archives, became my fiscal sponsor. Then I'm like, can you be my mentor? I don't even know how to make a movie. Basically, I didn't tell him that. But he said yes to me. And he was like, really became my, I called him for everything. I was over there every week going, how do you do this? How do you do that? And, and then, and I really believe that is a power greater than myself, that when you're aligned with this thing you're supposed to do, you, the universe kicks in and there's a flow.
Yeah.
And then just sort of cut to the end, when I had a final cut and Penny came in to watch the final cut, and he cried, and he looked at the ceiling and he goes, now I know why I said yes to you.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then I in the middle I was like, can I use your name as the executive producer? And he's like, sure. But I was always thinking, I don't think he heard my question.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't want to ask him again in case he said, I didn't say that. You know what I mean? And so that moment, that imposter syndrome kind of thing, and that moment was very meaningful. And then I had the ugly cry where, your gums are showing. But that's really what happened. It was just like this thing, and then, doors started opening up, and then...
There really is, the more I think about it, and this is through my own practice of meditation, which I've been doing. I've been doing TM since April.
Me too!
Oh my God, changed my life.
Bob Roth is my teacher.
I I listen to him every day. I do the group thing.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God. When did you start doing it?
Well, I started 37 years
Okay.
ago, but then I did other kinds of meditations.
Okay.
But Bob just sort of reinitiated me,
This
you
is
know,
wild.
like 2 summers ago.
It got me here. I mean, basically.
Yeah.
It really did.
Because I met Bob through Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry and Jessica loved Cracked Up. Then they sent it to Bob. And then Bob called me. And it's like, Bob is my rock star. And I'm like, he goes, this is Bob Roth. I go, wait.
The Bob?
You're like a Beatle to me. This is amazing.
And you know the Seinfeld thing about he only thought you were supposed to do it once a day?
Yeah.
And then when he found out it was
I
twice,
love
he said,
that.
I would have kept doing the show.
I love that bit.
was so great.
I send that to everybody for
It's
TF.
the hardest part, actually, for me.
Yeah.
I really, really have to force myself to do it twice. Because I have a really crazy schedule.
Me too,
I know,
the
we all
afternoon
do.
one. I
Which is, again, the process of that. But there are 2 things that you said I want to talk about. First of all, I was at Woodstock in 1969. I'm totally in love with Wavy Gravy. The thing that I wrote an essay, which I'm going to send you, actually.
Who was Hugh Romney at Woodstock?
Hugh Romney, exactly.
Yeah.
And Chip Monk.
Oh,
I was in love with her. She was so beautiful. Oh, my God. And I was 15. And I was a twin. I say was because he died in 2002. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really strange. Very weird. I mean, the psychic stuff is very weird when that other person dies. Every twin has to some degree or another. But anyway, we were like the only kids there, basically. I mean, I didn't see anybody my age. Mm-hmm. But of course, because I was an alcoholic, I mean, I was way ahead of the curve or whatever. But you also said something about that really interested me about, you're really talking about the law of attraction, right? Mm-hmm. In some way or another.
Yeah.
And heart's desire.
Yes.
Right. And it's the it's the hardest thing about living.
And trust.
And trust.
But having faith in that. You
Faith
know,
without words.
Odetta, the great folk singer,
Yeah,
was
love
my
her.
second mother.
You're kidding.
Okay.
Her.
And she taught me how to trust, you know, that desire, that your heart.
Yeah.
Right?
It's your heart.
Because in my first family, God bless them, but if I said I want to be an actress, why are you going to be an actor? You don't have what? Why are you making a movie about that Wavy Gravy? Who is he? Who's that weird looking guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like Odetta, like Peter Yarrow did a big thing for teachers in New York at Radio City.
Yeah.
And everybody was standing up, and you know, and Odetta was one of the performers. Everybody was introducing their teachers and saying how great teachers are. And Odetta, you know, goes out on the stage and she says, teachers can kill children's dreams.
That's great.
Because they can tell a child. All it takes is a teacher and authority to say, you can't draw.
Yeah.
You can't sing. Right?
Yeah.
You can't play that instrument. And then their dream is their not just dream, but their joy.
Yeah.
Their joy is gone.
Yeah.
Right? And I went with Wavy. He was visiting, so Wavy and I and Odetta went. So we were in the audience, and she goes, "Let me tell you who my teacher is." And she stood Wavy up in the audience because he celebrates, you know, like all parts and the different parts and being different and all of that. And so, yeah.
I was very lucky. You know, I'm a poet primarily.
Me too.
I have like 4 books of poetry. I'm coming out with a new one.
Oh, I don't. Mine are. I'm a closet poet and closet painter.
Oh, I'm a serious poet. I mean, I only say that because my mentor, lucky me, and I was a kid, was Adrian Rich, was my mentor. And we used to go to her house on Saturday mornings, and just me, my twin brother, and a woman named Lori Robertson, and read W.S. Merwin, and those guys were popular at the time. And actually published 2 books, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing one of her books. It was called The Necessities of Life, which I thought, wow, that's an incredible title, right? Mm-hmm. It was like her second or third book, and I thought, it's poetry. And I asked her, I said, you actually you can have a life, like just being a poet. You don't have a day job? Like, is that it? And she said, well, I teach. I said, well, that's kind of cool because you're teaching something that's related to right. And so she was the one that said, yeah, you could be a poet. And you're going to do some other things. I mean, it's like Grace Paley said, you know, what's your advice for writers? She said, have a low overhead, right? Exactly. Which I try to follow. Right? But tell me, so you went from Wavy, was Wavy Gravy your first venture?
It was my first film.
Wow,
So when we would
lucky
do,
you.
have you seen it?
No, I'm dying
Oh my
to
God,
see
you're
it.
gonna love it.
What's it called?
The Wavy Gravy movie.
The Wavy Gravy
But the
movie.
subtitle is Saint Misbehavin' with no G.
I can't wait, of course.
Yeah.
So the Wavy Gravy movie, okay.
Yeah. So that was my first film, and then, I just, I had a knowing, which nobody else knew, but to try to ask people for money. Can you give me money? I've never made a film before, and I'm making a film about an icon. I haven't been to film school. I've never made a film. But I had this knowing. I just knew it was going to be huge.
Yeah.
I just knew it. I couldn't explain it. And
Well, it's the notion of actually people watching it and then going out to help somebody, don't you think?
yeah, and I was like, this like starving actress, and I raised, over $1 million, but little by little, crying in my pillow. Like one day, a friend of mine, I said, I really want to film this benefit concert, the Save a Foundation. Was telling a friend of mine, he goes, Michelle, I'm going to write you a check for $1,000. He goes, how much do you need to go? I go, I think it's going to cost me like $10,000 to hire people, blah, blah, blah. He goes, I'm writing you the first check. And he was right, that first check. So then that night, I go, oh my God. And then that night, I had dinner with my friend Joy, who owned Candle Cafe in New York. She goes, I told her, I go, my friend David wrote me this check for $1,000. And she goes, I'm going to write you the second check for, right? And and it's like, that's how it happens.
Yeah.
And so when people ask me, how do you do it? I go, you just start asking. But you ask in a way that is like, and it used to really terrify me to ask for money because I had a lot of like money trauma, and I used to get sick and throw up before I'd ask somebody for money.
Yeah, it's hard.
And because I used to get shamed for asking for more allowance or something like that. And then somebody said, you're actually helping somebody. When you ask them for money,
You're helping them.
you're giving them the opportunity to be a part of something really important and really impactful.
Yeah.
And so you're being of service to them, and I never looked at it that way. And then he goes, if they say no, just know they're already a giver. And so just be grateful.
Yeah.
Say, so I do start, I go, I know you're already a giver.
That's great.
So whether you give to me or you give to another film.
Yeah.
I have a great story about, one of my amazing funders, who is more, I hate calling her a funder, Regina Scully. She produces so many amazing movies. When I met her in San Francisco, I flew out. One of my producers said, go meet Regina and see if she'll invest in Cracked Up. And so she was running late. I was sitting outside in her Zen garden. And she comes in, and you could tell she had a lot going on in the day, very busy. And she had just a few minutes. She said, tell me about the film. And I just knew I didn't want to be rushed to talk about the film. So I said, why don't we just talk about what gets us out of bed in the morning? And we started talking about love and service. Okay?
That's
5 hours later, I'm still there. And she
great.
wanted to see every bit of footage that I had shot with Daryl, and she ended up,
It's
funding
really,
the movie. But then she said, can I see some footage? I have, she canceled the next appointment. I have 30 minutes. So I started showing her footage, raw footage of Daryl. And then she said, can I see more? And so she kept canceling her appointments to see more. And then she was like trying to get me on her flight back to New York. So it's just about a heart connection. It really is. And that
the thing
that we that's what attracts people. Yeah. And as much as I try to get anybody, could you please raise money for my film? I was like, but you're the one with the passion, so that's what attracts people.
Yeah, totally. Can you just tell me something, a great takeaway that's for you that's happened in this time that you've been here this week?
I was at dinner with Keith Gard, my manager, and Tammy McCrary, who we're doing panels together with DMC. Yeah. And I started crying. I started talking about how lonely I felt before I came here. from the pandemic. And even though I'm working and I'm shooting again, but it's like a little here and there. Like I go out, do my job, or maybe I'll go to starting to go dip my toes into, okay, I'll go to this screening. But for the most part, I'm home and I'm in pajamas, half down. Zoom call, nice shirt, half up,
Yeah.
right, top up. And the loneliness has really been getting to me. And I was the 5th person in Mount Sinai COVID unit, and I almost died.
Oh,
and
ouch.
and then I had long haul COVID for a year and a half, so it was debilitated. And it's a long story, but I'm I put out, because I was the 5th person and I did think I was gonna die, and somehow, I don't know how, but I'm not a big Facebook person, but I wrote I think I'm gonna die. I'm in this on Facebook, and so many people said that I was the first person that made it real for them, because it went out major that I had this, and it was really mirrored like the AIDS epidemic at first, where the nurses were afraid to touch the patient, and they were afraid to be near me, and so they put on, to have nurses put a hazmat suit on and come in, and they were standing over there, not near me, and they were afraid to look in my eye. They were afraid they're gonna get it
From looking at you.
to look in my eye, and somehow I communicated to the doctor, they can stand over there, but I need them to look in my eyes. Please tell the nurses and everyone to look in my eyes. And so cut to coming here, and everybody is so nice and so loving, and even wearing cute outfits. You know what I mean? I brought an outfit for the day, and I brought an outfit for the night.
Good for you,
And
girl.
I've been dressing up, and wearing the bottom halves and the shoes and the whole thing. I mean, but it sounds silly. But I was literally crying about what it feels like to get dressed again. What it feels like to be with people, not just for a dinner or a screening, but for these 4 days, and to make connections with people and get to know people, and that everybody here is really, starting with Ben and Paige, you feel their intention for helping people, for recovery, for Phoenix Rising, for Black Line, all the organizations that are here, and it just feels like we're all one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like you feel the connection and you feel the love. And I'll just say, because I know we have to wrap it up, but that what I learned about trauma is that the answer to trauma is connection, and our brains are wired to be in sync. We are wired to be in sync. Our brains are literally wired for love. We're not wired for isolation. We're wired to be together. We're wired for love. And that's how we will survive as a species, is to love each other.
We must love one another.
Then that's what my new film is about. I didn't get to talk about it.
What is
but,
it?
Well, it's about relationships. It's about how to be relational. It's about moving from patriarchy, power over, to power with.
Beautiful.
And so it's about, if I can connect to myself, then I can connect to you. If I can connect to myself, I can connect to racism.
Right.
If I can connect to you, I can connect to the
Beautiful.
climate.
Yeah.
And so it really is, to me, the key. So we have the trauma piece, but we need the repair piece.
Yeah.
How do you repair? And that's what Terry Real, and so many people, but I'm making a film about him, and so about how to do the repair. He really teaches us how to do that.
We must love one another or die.
Yeah, but we don't know how. We're not
Yeah.
taught how to
I
repair.
know.
We get in a little thing and
Yeah.
someone gets triggered and says something, I say something
You
and then
suppress
someone
it.
gets mad at me and then we don't talk for 20 years because there's some sort of fear for me to say to you, you know what? I'm really sorry that I upset you last week. You mean so much to me. I'm really sorry. I did that last week. I was pushy with a friend and he got upset and I said that. I texted him, I'm so sorry I was pushy last week. You mean so much to me. I love you so much. And he wrote back, that means so much to me. I love you so much.